So the first thing when we're talking pricing that you really want to figure out when you're quoting is it's a lot of times it's hard because you got to make sure you're asking all of the right questions. You have all of the information before you fully give a quote. And then how are you wanting to quote your clients? Are you wanting to do hourly? Are you wanting to just set up monthly pricing packages and things along those lines? Monthly, I would say, is definitely the better way because as you go, now you're getting a little bit quicker at doing the services. You can also handle, hire out contractors to help you out, things along those lines. So, yeah, monthly usually ends up working out better for you and your clients because then, hey, this is the set monthly price. So they know every month this is what's getting charged and all the things. Yes, monthly is definitely better. It's what we try to stick to. I will say there are times where I do go with an hourly pricing. It just depends on what kind of cleanup we're looking at. Have they went in and done some stuff and made things like a total nightmare? Because if so, sometimes that's hard to, you come out on the better end of that doing an hourly pricing versus monthly or just starting completely over with their books. So when we're looking at monthly pricing, what I always try to ask is one, you want to figure out how many accounts they're having. So you want to make sure if at all possible, and they have QuickBooks Online set up, I usually try to get accountant access to that because once you can get accountant access, then you can go in and you can get a full picture of what you're looking at. I know a lot of people are normally nervous in the beginning to ask that question, but if we have accountant access, there's been very few clients or even potentials that I've gotten pushback from on asking for accountant access right off the bat. But it helps give you a clearer picture so you can give them a quote. So you're not having to come back later and say, hey, okay, now I found all this stuff. So now it's going to be hundreds of dollars more, thousands of dollars more than what I initially quoted you. So it ends up being better on you and them if you can get that access because you can go in and look. But you want to make sure you're asking all the questions, getting as much information. What services are they looking for when they're coming to you looking for bookkeeping services? Are they just looking for you to go in and code transactions every month, reconcile transactions, and be able to provide a profit and loss and a balance sheet? Or are they looking for additional services? Payroll services, accounts receivable, accounts payable type stuff, bill pay, any of those things, those additional things, you want to make sure that you're asking all those questions. And then, of course, getting a feel for whatever industry they're in, what industry are you looking at? So if we're dealing with e-commerce, just for example, how many different payment processors are we looking at? If you don't have experience, you probably wouldn't know this, but the ones who have experience, and if you have experience with e-commerce in particular, those can get complicated. You can deal with a lot of journal entries if you're dealing with returns, if they have products, different things like that. So you definitely want to be asking those questions. So payment processing, and when I say that, like PayPal, are they using Venmo? Do they have Shopify? Restaurant industries, those can add a level of complexity to those as well, because they might have DoorDash systems that you're needing to pull reports from, Toast, Square, like all these different things. So you want to ask as many questions as you can. But if you have access to that QuickBooks, you're able to see some of those things. You're able to see what else coming out, what's in there. So what payment processing systems, do they have a business system or anything that they've connected to QuickBooks? I usually try to ask or look for that as well. How many bank accounts, credit cards, savings accounts that they have? And then you also want a number of transactions. I always ask for a number of transactions because for me, that helps me to see, especially now that I'm 5 years into my business, I know about this number of transactions takes me about that much time to go in and code and do all the things. So I need to quote around this monthly price. And so that kind of helps me pinpoint that when I'm asking for a number of transactions. So that's one of my top questions that I'm asking: number of transactions, number of accounts. And again, if you have access to their QuickBooks, you're able to go in and to pull that information for yourself. You can see, do they have any payment processors? What else are they doing? Are they running payroll, where you need to go in and check payroll journal entries and make sure all that stuff is correct and all of the things?
Yeah, a couple of things. I know when I started, we were talking about this on Tuesday in the scope creep training a little bit. And when I got started, I went to everyone's website that I could possibly find that was a bookkeeper. And I was like, what are they charging? But you have no context for how their team is set up, what their overhead is. Like you don't know any of that behind the scenes. You're just going off of their website. Me and Megan have said, I think from the very beginning, we 100% recommend you doing your personal books in QuickBooks Online. And there's a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons is you start to know how long it's going to take you to categorize, because you know your personal expenses, you know what your mortgage is, you know what your electric bill, you know what your water bill is, right? So for me, like when I do my personal books, I'm going to see a transaction come through water company, electric company, Amazon. What did I purchase on Amazon? I quickly know what I purchased on Amazon last week, right? So I don't have to go wait and go back to the client. So I'm coding. So you start to understand how long it's going to take you to code 100 transactions, because you can physically time yourself at the end of the month. Wait until 100 transactions build up, start a timer, and go for it on your personal books. Because assuming you have the information, how long does it take you to code 100 transactions? And that starts to give you a framework, especially if you're using like our calculator. It's based on transaction count. So if a client tells you, hey, I have 120 transactions, when you put that in and it gives you a quote of, let's say 240, it's going to be a little less than that, but let's say you get the quote of $240. That might be too high for you because you can do it in less time. So maybe you want to tweak your quoting calculator to match how much time it's going to take you. And once you start to build out a quoting calculator, especially ours, because it is dynamic and we can help you get on and change it to fit your needs, you can create a system where quoting isn't the hard part now, because now you have a system. That takes some time and we can always help bounce ideas off. But if you're struggling to underquote, what happens if you underquote? What happens when the client comes back and says, or I was just talking to someone yesterday, the client added, I don't remember how many accounts, let's say five accounts over this quarter. And she's, what do I do? Do I just wait until he's up for renewal at the end of the year? Do I go ahead and do it now that it's at the end of the quarter? I went ahead and said, do it now that it's at the end of the quarter, because it's increasing your workload now. And so for her, because it was at the beginning of July that he added it, so I would have preferred to do it in July, August 1st for that August payment, but we didn't for whatever reason. So now we're still in that first quarter. And so I told her, I suggested, hey, in your subject title, just say your account grew this quarter, and then give the price increase, or give them on the call. I always prefer getting them on the call, but I know some of you guys don't want to. So sending an email as soon as you can to go ahead and let them know, hey, you're out of scope, is 100% recommended if you find yourself underquoting. The other thing that happens with underquoting, before I get back to that, sometimes clients will start to send you tasks. Can I get this extra report? Can I see how much I spent on contractors? Can I do all of these things? I have a client who pretty much led me to believe at the very beginning they were going to be this client that would send me, can I get this random stuff and do all this random stuff? So I added a line item in the engagement letter, and you can do this for just all clients across the board. In essence, project work was the line item and the hourly rate. And I gave a buffer of myself for 5 hours a month to be able to just charge them automatically. So they agreed to it when it signed up, when I do the monthly billing or whatnot, and they're on automatic payments, but I can get in at the end of the month and go ahead and charge them for however many hours I spent without having to go back and get their permission or waiting for them to pay the invoice, because I've already gotten that agreement and they know to expect it. So that would be a way to buffer if you're like really scared of underquoting, or you have a history of underquoting. Go ahead and just say, hey, if at any point you need project work, it's going to be this, and go ahead and have them agree to it from the jump street. Megan, did I use that right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, guys, Megan used that phrase a long time ago, and I was so scared to ask her what it meant. And it meant from the very beginning. And so I'm inviting you into an insider joke there. The one thing that came up when we were talking on Tuesday, if I can tangent for just a second, when it comes to scope creep is part of what happens when we start undercharging. So undercharging can just be we undercharged from the beginning and we didn't value our work. The other thing is scope creep happened immediately. We thought it was going to be one thing, we get in and something else. And we're like, oh, I guess I just have to deal with this because I quoted him $300 or her $300. A couple of things. One, is it just a process issue? Can we get the process more efficient? And that can happen one of two ways. A, we can make it more efficient and push back on them to actually give us the information we need versus us doing all the work to sort through the information. Two, we can hire someone that has a lower hourly rate than ourselves. If you're trying to charge $100 an hour, but you can pay someone $20 an hour to do it, and it takes them 2 hours and it was going to take you 2 hours, now we're saving $180 or $160 a month because we're able to pay someone else to do it. The other reason scope creep happens is just we're not saying, hey, and charging the client when other things are coming up or it wasn't as it seemed. Another way you can do this when you're talking to your clients is we do quarterly reviews, or we do reviews on everyone's account, and you can add this to your engagement letter. And as things come up, you can just say, hey, we review every 60 days or every 90 days, just to make sure the engagement's still valid. And that's why I say just as soon as you can, as soon as it's out of scope. When I'm working with client or students and bookkeepers who feel like they're telling me, typically what happens is I'm hearing bookkeepers say, I'm just working so much. I'm working 40 hours a week. And then I ask them what they're taking home, which I will only do this if you're paying for a one-to-one, and I will only call you out on this. I'll ask them how much they're taking home a month. And I will find out they're working 40 hours a week, which is 160 hours a month, to take home $2,000 a month. Something's wrong. No bookkeeper should be making $10, $12 an hour if you're owning your own business. You have your own taxes, you have your health insurance, you have all of these other expenses. And I guarantee you did not start your business to make $10 an hour. It would be so much easier to go get a full-time job making $10 an hour. If that's where you're coming from, making $10 an hour does sound great. And then you need to get on a call with Megan on mindset.
Yes, please.
Permission to go charge more, because you do, if you're charging $10, $12 an hour, taxes on top of that, health insurance on top of that, your overhead on top of that, now you're way below minimum wage. If there's anyone in here charging less than $50 an hour, please talk to us.
You don't have any idea on what you can charge or like where you should be. What you definitely want to start thinking about though is where would you like or need to see your hourly rate at? Because even though we're pricing monthly, you still want to make sure your hourly rate at the end of the day, because just like Sherry said, if you're doing this client and you're charging them $300 a month, it should not be taking you 30 hours out of the month to do that client either. So you want to be thinking about it from that standpoint. So where do you need to see your hourly rate at? Where do you want to see your hourly rate at? Those sort of things. And keep in mind, so when I started 5 years ago, I started out charging hourly and started out charging hourly at $50 an hour. And I was scared to death to do that because a lot of people were like, it felt like nobody's going to pay that and all the things. And then I had a potential client at the time reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for bookkeeping services. Like, what are your fees and all this? And a CPA was charged. And now this is also 5 years ago. So a lot's changed in 5 years. Think about from that standpoint as well. But that the CPA's office was charging him $225 an hour to do the bookkeeping. So think about it from that standpoint, because what you're doing, there is a lot of value in it. You are worth it doing the bookkeeping and doing it correctly and stuff. So don't discount yourself to the $10 an hour or whatever it is either.
So I like to quote black and white, which is why I quote based on bank accounts, transactions. That way, if I have 2 people come to me, because imagine if he was only doing $200,000 a year. but the quote came up to $500 a month. Would you feel differently? For me, I can take the emotion out of how much he's making. So how much he's making has no impact on my quote.
Okay.
Yeah. So that it's just the work. Because I will have people come to me that are making 100,000 a year. They've got like 13 bank accounts, they've got loans, they've got an SBA loan, they've got a vehicle loan, they've got assets. And I go to quote them $1,200 based on the calculator or whatever calculator I'm using. So I've developed, so like we have the calculator in the quote, the course, and we expect you to build it out for yourself. So mine, I have specific things in there for my personality, for my quoting. When I send them back the quote, there's no emotion. It is just, here's the quote for you based on your situation. And someone with 100,000, a $2,500 quote, let's just be extreme, might say no, but really the workload is there. So I'm not paying attention to like how much revenue, just because it's going to, if it's going to take me 25 hours a month, it's going to take me 25 hours a month. If you have additional questions, we're always happy to get on a call to answer those for you so that you're finding the information you want and getting the answers you need. But the Bookkeeper Blueprint, we have a couple of options for that. So we have like the Fast Start Pro, which is our community with all 12 coaches. You get 2 private coaching calls with me, Megan, Allie, any of the coaches for whatever it is that will help you grow your business. So if that's quoting, if that's marketing, your website, if it's how to, I'm trying to connect Toast and reconcile Toast. We can look over your shoulder and help with some of that. And then you also have the option of what we call like unlimited one-to-one. So scary. And in the Premier, you get Voxer access to me and Megan, where we're answering almost, it feels all day long some days, but we're getting in, we're answering. If you have questions, you can send us a voice message, a screenshot, type text, and that can be used for anything from mindset to actual bookkeeping questions. So if you're looking for something like that, and then you do get what we refer to as unlimited private coaching calls with any of the coaches, where you have a question one day, you get in, do it, you move forward the next day, and you keep working with the coaches to get maybe a messy cleanup done, a messy onboarding done, and just knock it out. Absolutely. So we're here for you in multiple different ways. But if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those questions. Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing you guys on calls and meeting you over Zoom. So looking forward to that. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys next week.